terms that has been coming up again and again is AI and GCCs, and the very fascinating way on how it converges. There has always been traditional AI, which has been into practice, and so is GCCs. GCCs as a concept are not new to India, but all of a sudden in the last 2 years, what has really changed that it has really became the talk of the town. My name is Mrityunjay. I am the head of TechCircle Consulting at ST. And to really decode on what is really happening in GCCs, I am also joined by Ashwin Moduga. Ashwin Moduga, why don't you give an introduction of yourself on what you're doing today?
So I am Ashwin Moduga. I head strategy and operations at Rakuten India. Many people have asked me what strategy and operations mean in terms of daily life for me at Rakuten. Let me just split that out for a second. Strategy, it's essentially being able to identify the right story for Rakuten India, its value for the parent company. Operations is where it gets complex. I mean, operations is a lot to do with everyday processes and how seamless are they across 14 or 15 different functions in the organization, so that we allow each of our leaders to build engineering solutions and deploy them easily without a lot of hindrances. So that's strategy and operations for you. The question that you raised has a couple of different segments to it. The first part is the evolution of what we now term as GCCs. I started my career with the captive, with the GCCs, the back end of GE and the GE group back in 2007. I began with the data and analytics related processes. A large percentage of it was related to general business process outsourcing. Operational outsourcing was the big thing, when captives were built back in 2005, 2007, and 2010. And then 2008, I guess, was when the economic meltdown happened, began in the US, and it spread across multiple regions. During these meltdowns, what a lot of folks realized is it's not just operations that need or can be outsourced to other countries. A lot of decision making from a computing standpoint could also be outsourced and could be built where there are large availability of talent pools, and India became one of those hotspots. Think about it. GCCs are supposed to be capability centers, right? And it now depends largely on what a particular enterprise, let's say in the US or Europe, even considers as capability, right? If it's a tech company, take Rakuten for example. Think about it, Jay. A company like Rakuten, which was born right after the dot-com boom. 2000 was when it began operating as a full blown entity. Most of our businesses, and Rakuten has 70 plus businesses in the last 23 or 25 years. In these 70 plus businesses, probably a large, huge 90-95% of them, because they were born after 2000, are tech businesses. Now, for any tech enabled companies, I mean Ichiba, which is our e-commerce platform, right? The core of it, the core capability is technology. Basically, if you have the right e-commerce website, you do better business, right? So Rakuten, for them, for us, the part that we consider as capability is technology. When we build a global capability center, we don't focus on operations. Operations continue to happen in Japan and in the HQ areas where we are very prominent. But for us, technology is what builds, grows, and continually accelerates our parent business, and that technology is what we build in our capability center. Now, for some other company, that technology need not be the core capability. It could be something else. It could be operations. It could be HR related operations for a HR related company. That becomes the core capability, and that becomes GCC. So you will have to demarcate GCCs into operational centers, into tech centers. For example, Rakuten India is a pure tech center, right? It's sponsored by the CIO's office in Rakuten HQ, and most of the technology that we develop here is used every day in each of our solutions and services across our 70 businesses that we have. and it's a beautiful company, Rakuten. I mean, like you said, we are spread across telcos, we are spread across probably some of the largest fintech segments in Japan, and more importantly, from a traditional standpoint, we are spread across multiple internet services that we provide in Japan. For each of these 70 businesses, right from conceptualization to building and then deploying and maintaining of each of those technology platforms, a large part of it is done by Rakuten India. At any given point of time, a global capability center is only as strong as the parent company. Now, the idea is that both the parent stakeholders along with Rakuten India stakeholders together come to build these platforms, together come to make sure that these platforms work each day, every day, 24 by 7, and continue to grow our business in terms of users.
Brilliant. It's very insightful, and I couldn't agree more. Do you believe that there is a shift which is happening? And if it is, what is positioning that?
Any culture, any skill set pool, talent pool, has its course of evolution over a period of time. Back in 2011, 2012 was when the whole phenom of robotic process automation came in. RPA was huge, and absolutely every captive that dealt with data feared jobs. Now, over the last 6 or 7 years, what has happened is all of these processes are now being automated at scale. When we are able to build that scale, what typically happens is you are again allowing your overall populations to skill up and do something new. That is what happened over the last 6 7 years, and now people are becoming architects of those data pools and designing these large scale architectures that help large companies. That shift from skewing towards transactional to being strategy led outcomes which have huge business impact, that thinking shift is probably what has made today's GCCs into super hotspots. Now, these super hotspots are hotspots where computing is used to the highest possible extent. And whenever you have computing usage pretty high in such hotspots, that is where everything gets sold, right? And that's where all of you guys are today looking at GCCs as separate verticals or sub verticals, that you have vertical leaders for all the tech companies, right? That's the change that I'm seeing. Now, this has happened, one, because of automation, two, because of a lot of industry captains who've sort of went around the world, looked at what most other countries are doing, have come back to India, become leaders across these captive centers, GCC, built new solutions that are by India for India, and then these solutions from India have been scaled or exported to countries outside. Take UPI, for example, right? I mean, that was a classic case study that we speak about, right? How it is scaled up to the world. So that is what I believe is this new evolution.
Absolutely. Would you want to actually show or tell our viewers on some of the innovations that you are driving at Rakuten in Rakuten India? That's number one. Number two, since you've been a part of this industry for quite some time, can you also recommend or pinpoint us to some of the actual innovations that you see in pilot stage, and at the same time some of the innovations that you have seen has made it through the pilot stage and now are at a scaling stage?
When it is innovation that is concerned, there is no Rakuten India, or Rakuten any other region. It's all one team that works together to build these scalable, high agile platforms that benefit each of our businesses every day. It's always a joint effort that happens from the HQ and other regions. All of these teams work together. Some of them bring design to the table, some of them bring scale to the table, some of them bring everyday deployment security to the table. But effectively, each of these teams at Rakuten come together in order to build these solutions. Just to give you a couple of such good, strong examples, something that is scaled well for us is the RPay platform. RPay is probably one of those large fintech payment platforms in Japan, to a large extent built out of India. It's managed out of India as well. With all of these teams coming together has been one true example of ownership, both from a product transformation standpoint and also allowing it to scale to such a large population in Japan. That's one good example. The second one is Rakuten. If you look at the 70 different businesses, the idea is that we have these multiple businesses and we have a user base of around 2 billion users. They can log into any of these 70 services with one single sign on. So the play is about helping these users move from one service to another service. That's how we do cross selling and upselling, etc. And that's where our data and analytics team come into play. I mean, the whole Rakuten user journey, user experience system is run through these data and analytics teams. Now, these data and AI and analytics teams are spread across Europe, India, and the US. All of them sit together and build these ecosystem plays for Rakuten Group, and that ecosystem play is what is going to be the core engine of growth for Rakuten in the future.
I think you're absolutely spot on. Now, to run any innovation, any successful transformation, tech is something that you've already mentioned, but there are two more pillars to it: people and process. Do you see some of those areas, those opportunities which players and vendors in that segment should really think before reaching out or collaborating with the GCC? Or, as a matter of fact, Rakuten?
I wouldn't, specifically speak about Rakuten because each GCC has their own set of needs. Now, again, there are two parts to this question. The first part is talking about the talent pool of India itself, right? This is not something new I'm going to talk about, but product mindset is something that needs to be inculcated into every incoming engineer that joins a GCC. I mean, something that we as a country have always um, not really driven the right paths for building product mindset as a culture across organizations. It's been happening over the last 6 or 7 years in bits and pieces, especially with our 100 plus unicorns and 200 plus unicorns. A lot of them are product driven companies, so most of the engineers working in those cultural environments are now looking at product and looking at product roadmaps in terms of how they take things to the market. But it still needs to happen at scale for the masses. We have millions of engineers coming in each year, and a lot of them, the focus on product mindset needs to be driven through cultural enhancement. I mean, how do we do it is a discussion that will take a couple of days, but that's something that we'll need to continue to do. On the second part of how vendor ecosystems engage with GCCs, Mrityunjay, to be super honest, it's not a one-shot fit everyone. I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult. It's extremely customized, and there is a reason for this requirement for customization. I'll tell you why. When did you first hear of the term GCC?
I guess 2000 and to be really honest, 2018, 17.
Right?
Yeah.
Rakuten has been there doing the same technology innovation from 2016, 2015, in various forms, but we've been there. There are other GCCs who've built technologies since 2012, huge ones. I don't want to get into the names, but they've been there for 15 years. So let's take those 1800 GCCs that you are speaking about, and each of them are on a certain point in the growth curve or evolutionary curve. In the beginning, you might just need support from vendors from a local regulation standpoint, from local policy standpoint, from having a strong robust HRMS system, and then you move into high value computing where your computing needs continue to grow. Though you need data center spaces, you need private clouds, you need hosted clouds. That is the second phase, and then you come to third phase where you need GPUs, you need higher strengths of computing because AI becomes everyday usage for GCCs. For example, at Rakuten, we track our AI adoption in the company vigorously. I mean, we track it every day. We have KPIs for it, right? So this is the sort of the more advanced part of the evolution of GCCs, where the use of AI is super high, because of which computing needs become high, and because of which the whole vendor ecosystem also needs to start looking at it as a different company. You will have to first identify that the GCC that you're talking to or speaking to, at which part of the growth curve is it? What are their core needs at that particular point of time? Nobody is going to come in and directly start an AI only center. That's not how GCCs work. Enterprise in the US or Europe or somewhere outside has a particular need. It could be a cost arbitrage to begin with, but then they move to India. Believe me, India is costly, and it's not cheap anymore. Resourcing is not cheap, space is not cheap. Absolutely everything is as costly as most of the other countries that we're seeing. We've had multiple conversations before, right? And something that I've picked up in the past is selling is always about playing to the emotional anxiety of the buyer. It's not really about a feature, right? So what is that emotional anxiety of the parent enterprise is something up to the vendor to identify, and once you have that need, you go ahead with the solution.
In India, 70 to 80%, if not more, business, tech business, is driven through partners. Now, GCCs are, to the best of my knowledge, not really very price sensitive when it comes to value versus price. When value is something that you're really looking at a GCC, would you prefer working with a partner or an OEM or a combination, and why?
Let's not mix OEMs and channel partners. Both of them, in the kind of services they provide, they're starkly different. OEMs have a certain product or technology that I might need immediately, and there is always a pull approach from a user like us, right? And channel partners are channel partners. I mean, the core strength that we look at channel partners is basically the speed with which they can deploy the right skill set. Skill set is what is the gold mines of today's talent pools. I mean, there are so many hundreds of new skill sets that are evolving each day, new requirements that are coming in each day. The biggest challenge that the GCC industry will continually face over the next couple of years is identification and deployment of specific skill sets at scale, right? Because skill set is something that was pushed by parent companies. It will come, it will trickle down, and whoever or whichever partners has the scale to deploy it, those will be chosen with the basic requirements in place. I mean, the channel partner is been existent for a certain number of years, their revenue is stable, their employees are stable, etc. Outside of all of that, the edge is that do they have the right skill set to be deployed easily at scale? That's the first part. The second part, coming to OEMs, right? It's all about which technology fits my current ecosystem. You're not going to be focusing on the emotional anxiety part of sales too much when you're selling a product that is almost commoditized in the market, right? Think of cloud, right, for a second. You have these five hyperscalers now. I don't know how many hyperscalers are there now, but each of them cannot compete anymore on features. The only area that they will continue to compete is the person I am selling to. Does my ecosystem fit well into their ecosystem? That's it. There is no other thing that we look at. Like you said, yes, we do not throw money, but our decisions are based on the ease of integration and implementation. If my ease of integration with a particular product is shortened by 20 or 30% in comparison to someone else, I will always choose someone that will give me that speed. Again, this trickles back to the idea that whenever I release or deliver engineering at a faster pace, my GTM is shortened for my parent company, which provides competitive edge. So these are the two things. On channel partners, focus on identifying the right skill set, be ready with even niche skill set to be deployed at scale. The second part for the OEMs, be more open to integrations with existing ecosystem. The Of late, a lot of product companies, their approach has been that customization is the way to go, which is not going to happen. No GCC will invest in too much customization. Does it fit into current ecosystem is what is going to be looked at.
Brilliant. I believe, to sum it up, what you mean is whether it is a channel partner or whether it is a OEM, if they're really willing to co-create with you, they are open for business.
Everybody always needs augmentation in terms of engineering strength, especially with GCCs, because the needs come in and go pretty fast, because the business cycles are pretty fast in tech led companies. Uh, Everybody is open always for business, but it is always through the idea that there is a need that is already identified, there is business impact that is calculated inside GCCs. GCCs are very particular about spending that is attached to certain ROI. Once that ROI is aligned, it the buying happens in phases. It is never consistent. The buying comes at a certain point of time and then comes again probably after a long break, because that first buying that we had done continues to sustain whatever is needed, and then there is always insourcing also, right? I mean, we continue to hire folks. This is on the software and services side. Now on the devices side of things, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a consistent, constant growth phase that every GCC happens to look at. I mean, you take any of our devices. I mean, look at this hall, for example, right? When this is full, it has at least 80 Apple MacBooks placed on these tables, and those 80 Apple MacBooks look to churn. Each time a certain time passes, it needs to be churned, new devices need to come in, etc. So on the devices side, I think it is pretty consistent. It's pretty easy to predict, but on the services and software side, it really depends again on the phase of evolution that the GCC is in. Does this answer your question?
It does, and it actually touches on a part that really has been a talk of the town. You mentioned decision and you mentioned buying. Now, GCC by nature is a global organization. How is the decision making happening? Is it a standalone decision that the local organization or the center has, or whether it has to go through a complete global approach, which is global plus local? How would you want to share a little bit of
It's
insights into it?
always a global approach, but it also heavily varies on the kind of procurement that we want to do. For certain specific technologies which have global implications, it is always a decision coming from HQ with recommendations and suggestions from the local teams. Having said that, take something like a HRMS solution. It's not easy to customize global HRMS systems into local regulations. In those places is when the local decision maker becomes a little more stronger. It's still a global decision. It still needs the right approvals from global and in terms of various functions that are spread across our parent companies. Um, the idea is that every time a particular technology has org-wide implications, the global part of it, goes up on the seesaw in terms of decision making strength. Every time the decision is something that is related to local policy, local regulation, that is when the local decision making becomes strengthened. Devices and endpoints is something that is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, that's something that we wholly decide locally. There is guidance sometimes from global HQs, but especially the servicing part of it is always local.
A lot of our viewers or the companies, the organizations that we really work with are the tech provider community, whether it is OEM or channel partners or digital native companies. All of them are wanting to look at GCC as a very important customer for themselves. And when I say customer, it is to really co-create. They want to, but they are not really able to find those three or four things that they should do before they reach out. Would you want to share those two or three advice that people should really be prepared with while wanting to come here?
Phase of evolution the GCC is in. Identify what the core capability that GCC has set out to do for the parent company is. And the third one is understand the tech stack of the parent company. If you have these three answers in place, it's basically permutation and combination of what you want to put forward as a solution. I'm not going to get into the details of what service it would be, what product it would be, but overall, if you are able to answer these three questions, the solution that you are going to pitch is going to be something that a GCC will immediately take up. Just these three. That's it.
Just to sum it up for our viewers, the last bit or the last piece of advice that Ashwin mentioned is, can you really cut the noise and identify what it really matters?